Hi there, it's Diane the Nursing Geek. It is back to school time. So today's video is going to be a sampling of some bullet journal spreads that I came up with for non-traditional students, particularly non-traditional students taking online courses. There are some really great tutorials out there on bullet journal spreads for students back to school, and I will link some of them down below that I've run across. In particular, Caitlin over at Caitlin's Corner has done quite a few really neat ones, both last year and this year. They're generally geared towards traditional students though. Students who, if they have a job, it's a part-time job in addition to being a full-time student, and who have 5 or 6 classes. Most of my students are taking one class at a time. My online students are definitely taking one class at a time and working, and in many cases also have a lot of family responsibilities, particularly kids. So I've tried to come up with some examples of how you could use a bullet journal spread to organize your studying if you're in an accelerated online course and you are also juggling all of these other things. It's not the only way. Definitely not saying it's the only way. There are plenty of digital planner options and other types of organization that I just am not even familiar with. Since I've taken up bullet journaling and that's what I'm drawn to, that's what I'm sharing. So let's get into it. Before I get into each spread, let me talk a little bit about what I filled into these spreads in order to create these examples. All of them are based on the first week of a course that I teach. And that course is offered online over 7 weeks. And as is fairly common with courses on that type of a very short block of weeks schedule, there are multiple things due throughout the week. In particular, what people often find confusing to keep up with, not confusing in theory, but confusing to keep up with, is that you might have a discussion that's due on Wednesday, but then you need to reply to somebody else by Friday, because otherwise the first person to post is kind of in trouble because they don't have anybody to reply to if everything is due Wednesday. So you get a couple days to do replies. That's one of the things students have asked me for help keeping organized for themselves, which is part of why I used that exact example, because it's a syllabus that I already have to work with. I changed up the shifts that the theoretical nurse going for their master's and taking this course might be working, but they always have some kid events to try to work into the week as well, so that there'll be some work items, some personal items, and some school items, because the majority of non-traditional online students are balancing work, family, and school. So, with that said, let's take a look at this first stripped down, very basic, single page weekly spread. Right down the middle of the page you've got the dates. To the left of the dates, all of the work and personal events, appointments, tasks, reminders, whatever needs to be there. And then on the right, all of school-related things, just to keep a little bit of separation. Since in this class things are due on Wednesdays, Fridays, and Sundays, and this particular nurse is working 3 to 11s and has kids who are presumably school age if they have ball games and Cub Scouts, then having some time to work during the day and pace things out made a lot of sense. So I alternated the reading and the watching of video lectures with actually posting assignments for their due dates. Thought that might be how this particular nurse would pace things out. So then on Tuesday, reading things, watching a lecture. Wednesday, posting the related assignments. Of course, maybe getting on a roll on Tuesday and posting the assignments, what do I know? But this would be sort of the plan, and if you get ahead of yourself, great. Something else that I kept consistent throughout is putting the time of the video lectures, because if you're trying to figure out when do I have time to do this, it's helpful to know, is this 5 or 10 minutes or is this a half an hour? How much time do I need to, what kind of a chunk of time do I need in order to watch this? And take notes and maybe rewatch things if I think I need to replay something. So my thought is that putting that information in there would also be helpful. The other thing that you see in parentheses next to some of the assignments, noticing that I was not terribly consistent with that on this spread, is what assignment it is. Is it assignment 1A, assignment 1C, assignment 1B, etc. So that's sort of the idea of this spread. This spread would be a little more elaborate. It's based on a weekly spread type that I used over the summer, where I did put some more decorative things and maybe some inspirational quotes at the top of the page, and used this sort of wraparound approach to laying out the week, and collected all of the items, whether it's events or appointments or tasks, all right into the days themselves. This particular nurse, you might notice, also works 7 to 7, an incredibly common shift. So whereas the previous nurse was going to a Labor Day picnic at 2 p.m., this nurse is just throwing some chicken wings in the crock pot, probably at 5 in the morning, so their significant other can bring them to the picnic because this nurse is going to be at work. My thought with how this nurse might cluster their assignments, they are the exact same assignments from the exact same syllabus, was more, oh my, so not doing this on a 12-hour shift day, do it on the days off. So that's why everything's sort of clustered into Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, with one lingering item on Saturday, because if there hadn't been anyone else to respond to by the time this nurse got done submitting everything on Friday for that discussion, well, then that's due by Sunday, so maybe plan to take a look at it and reply to somebody on Saturday. And that shouldn't take very long. So that can go in with a 12-hour shift. And I left the error that I made in, where I had put the lecture to watch sort of in the wrong place. Not necessarily wrong, just might as well keep the lectures related to a particular assignment together if you're going to cluster things this way. And that would be exactly how I would fix it if I had made that mistake. So I figured I'd leave it in. Yet another variation, and this nurse is working 11 to 7. So this nurse gets to go to the picnic too, presumably as long as they're not asleep, because that's pretty much the same as 2 in the morning for most folks. And this nurse took also a very different approach to how to organize things. There's a lot of room in those days, so all of the assignments could have gone into those days whenever they wanted to do them. However, this nurse chose to just make a note of the fact stuff is due on Wednesdays, on Fridays, and on Sundays. Got a little reminder there, yes, there is stuff due. And then down in the bottom, 2 blocks, when do these readings and lectures need to be read and watched by, and when do these assignments need to be done by. And that could either be migrated into a particular day, when this nurse is saying, okay, yeah, this day I'm going to have some time that I can spend reading chapters 1 and 6 from this textbook and watching a 9 3/4 minute vid. Which that wasn't intentional, by the way, for the intro lecture to be 9 3/4 minutes, but I was very amused when I discovered that, yes, at 9 minutes and 45 seconds, that's exactly what it is. So if you're a Harry Potter fan, then enjoy the unintentional Easter egg of being welcomed on platform 9 3/4. Anyway, so either those could be left in the boxes where they are and just crossed off as they're accomplished, or if this nurse wants to put things into a particular day as it becomes evident when it's going to be the best to get these things done, then they can just be migrated into their respective days. Lots of possibilities. So there you go. 3 sample spreads that you could use to organize your work and your family responsibilities with an accelerated online class. Obviously, since I'm teaching nursing, I am thinking in terms of what a nurse's schedule would look like, and I think I used the word nurse probably way too many times in this video. Could be for any student though. So I hope you found something useful. If so, please let me know down in comments. If you have some other approach that you have used successfully or are planning to try to use to organize yourself for taking an online course, an accelerated course, and juggling work and family and all these other things, please definitely share that below, because everybody can always use more ideas on how to juggle things, because that can be kind of stressful if you aren't figuring out how to keep all the balls in the air. Anyway, until next time, have a great day.